Yeah, well, actually we produced a small film based on the idea of Ibec to show you the importance of European business and just to put everything we do in the right scale. So maybe we start with the film.
Great.
Well, thank you for this, and certainly thank you for inviting me to this conference. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me and an honor to address the finest of Irish business community and also across Europe, like the Taoiseach said, just after 2 months after in office as a new Director General of Business Europe. I certainly thank Ibec for organizing this conference, for collaborating with us, and for really making the point, which is the most crucial at the time being, how can we become more competitive and how can we go back to growth? You know that both Business Europe and Ibec have been at the forefront to underline that it is business and business alone that can drive the recovery. But of course it has to have the right framework in order to do so, and certainly Ireland is an impressive example for sound and rapid structural reforms and how you can succeed on the basis of the right structural reforms. You've just seen the video Business Europe produced in order to explain that business is at the center of the solutions of the European crisis, or at least can be and must be of the center of the solution of this crisis we hopefully are about to overcome. The video shows that we have many assets on which we can build on. Europe is the largest economy in the world, still, by far, and Europe has global and innovative businesses. This is the good news, and this is certainly something which can make us self-confident. But, and of course there's a but, how can it be that we ended up in a situation where the Eurozone is still more or less in stagnation as a whole, when the rest of the world is already starting to recover, or in some regions recovering very well? Well, of course, the answer to this question is a very complex one. But one part of this answer, one reason, is quite simple. Europe needs to take more care of business. And we have here the President of the Commission, and I must say there's some hope, because he was talking about the right choices. But of course, the period we will have to make these things happen will be relatively short. So we all together will have to make sure that the right choices are made, because the challenges are high. The decline in Europe's manufacturing, we lost 10% compared to pre-crisis. We lost 3 million jobs in manufacturing. And of course, this particularly represents a major problem, not only for Europe and the European industry as itself, but for the prosperity of our whole continent. The crisis has clearly shown us Europe cannot be successful without a strong industry base, without a strong industry. Some years ago, and you might know I'm Austrian, this statement would have been heavily challenged by some. And I remember back in Austria, we had to explain to people that our wealth was basically coming from industry, because at the beginning they thought it was coming from tourism or from agriculture. But we managed to explain, and people understood, and now the crisis has given us the evidence, and now I would say there's nobody really challenging this statement that we need a strong industrial basis in order to be successful as a continent. Industry delivers around 16% of the European GDP and 80% of Europe's exports. 80% of private sector R&D comes from the manufacturing sector, and industry caters for 45% of Europe's workforce. Of course, if you account that with each job in the industrial sector, each job is linked with at least 2 high-quality jobs in the service sector. But 16%, of course, is not enough. And this is why we have to address this topic. And the best performing countries we have seen coming out of the crisis most rapidly, maintaining a high level of employment, are those who manage to maintain a strong industrial base over the year. So what we definitely will have to do is to reindustrialize Europe. And of course, labor productivity plays a central role in this respect. We have seen that in the decade preceding the crisis, most European countries have experienced large increases in labor costs, which have not been matched by sufficiently high productivity gains. We've seen that US labor productivity went up by 1.8% since the year 2000, whereas the growth in Europe was just 0.66%, so 1/3. And the gap of the productivity growth with the developing country, the emerging countries of the world, is narrowing. So a very clear challenge here. Of course, labor productivity gains are typically highest in countries with favorable business environment, strong macroeconomic fundamentals, and well-trained workforce. So the most important question, I would say, we have to answer, and have to ask ourselves first, but we have to answer, is how can we improve the business environment in Europe? Our surveys tell us that business is looking for reforms in mainly 3 key areas. Fiscal consolidation, of course, labor markets, and product markets. But this reform agenda, of course, is sometimes heavily challenged. There's a lot of resistance to this. And there's a lot of work to be done to fight these misconceptions. What do I mean? Well, I think the first misconception, and there Ireland is a good example, concerns the fiscalization and growth question. Fiscal consolidation is not the enemy of growth. On the contrary, sound public finances are the prerequisite of sustainable growth and employment. Member states must go on to strengthen their stability and, of course, go on to produce balanced budgets and reducing long-term debts. I mean, this is without any doubt, I would say. But progress has been made, and the President and the Taoiseach highlighted it. Progress has been made, but in many cases, unfortunate enough, too much based on tax increases. Well, Daniel said part of it, of course, has been necessary, I would agree, but I would also agree that it will have to stop one day, because at the end of the day, what we need is a balanced approach, of course, from the income side and from the expenditure side. The second misconception I would like to address concerns labor market flexibility. Flexible labor markets are not the enemy of employment. On the contrary, they facilitate job creation, speed of transition between jobs, and help to match skills, supply, and labor demand. This is crucial. This means we need to go on with national structural reforms, and also there is good science. I mean, in France, for the first time since I politically think, we had an approach based on a social partner agreement, which is going to the right direction. Of course, a small step still, but this is still a step to the right direction, and this is where we need to go. The third misconception I want to mention is the effects of increased competition via the completion of the single market. Stepping up competition on product market through competition in the single market is not a threat for companies and workers. I would again say, on the contrary, it opens up new growth and jobs opportunities, which we have to seize. And this, of course, and certainly applies to free trade agreements. This is one of the major possibilities to boost European jobs. And you've seen in the film that 1 out of 10 European jobs is based on exports going outside the European Union. And this is, of course, something we will have to build on. And our calculations and the calculations of the Commissions, and I would say the figures are similar, think that really managing to make this beginning free trade negotiations with the US, between the US and Europe, a success, could deliver another 2 million of jobs. So this is very important. But progress has also been made, and President Barroso stressed it, as far as cutting red tape is concerned. We are not there, we are not where we should have to be, but as far as impact assessment is concerned, and as far as the acknowledgement that cumulative effects have to be part of this impact assessment, at least the discussions are going to the right directions, but obviously we're not there yet. Ladies and gentlemen, the Irish presidency wants to open a new phase in the European drive for recovery. And the Taoiseach said it is well placed to be a model for the rest of Europe. We know that until 2008, we talked about the Celtic Tiger, and this building seems to be one of the most proud achievements of these heydays. And of course, we are happy that based on a strong corporate foundation and rooted in the relatively positive attitude of the Irish people towards the business world, you seem to be on the fast lane to get out of the group of the so-called program countries. And this is not by coincidence. I said it in the beginning of my statement. It is impressive to see how the right structural reforms are working. And I think all over Europe we were very happy to see that for the first time since years unemployment was going down. And this is a proof that the right structural reforms can work. A few minutes ago, I tried to hand over our priorities to the Taoiseach. I might do it after my speech because I had to come to stage. But I can tell you what our position is and what we are expecting from the Irish presidency. And the key message, which has been iterated by the Taoiseach in his speech and by Mr. Barroso, is it is about clear choices, it is about the right choices to be made, it is about the approach to the policy we are doing, but what we need, and this of course we have to be very clear about this, is a radical change in certain policies we are doing. The crisis has shown us that many things we have been doing were going to the wrong direction, and what we have been doing was not enough based on the competitiveness of European economy and the competitiveness of European business. The reduction of future-oriented budget lines, and I think this is the reason why the talks of the Taoiseach and Mr. Barroso is a little longer, to fix this multi-annual financial framework story, which I would say is so important that it's totally understandable. But the compromise we've seen in the Council has underlined that we are not there yet. It shows that the required change of mindset is not there. It shows that we cut investment in research and development under the chapter of Horizon 2020. It showed that we cut investment in Connecting Europe facility, which is the infrastructure. And it shows that we were not persistent enough to transform the European budget to the future and to the future challenges of our continent. Another point, and I would say this is one of the most important points for the upcoming weeks and months, is that we have a purely designed energy and climate policy, and this continues to put our industry at disadvantage. Our competitiveness is undermined by high energy prices. They went up by 28% between 2003 and 2011, and part of the reason of this is, of course, a design of the whole politics we think is not the right one, because what we had is something called energy policy, but in a way only driven by climate policy. So what we need is a clear focus on the other aspects of energy policy, which is security of supply and the price of energy. Today, and it has been said by many speakers, the price of gas for industrial consumers is below 30% in the US compared to Europe. Sometimes it's around 20% even. So if we go up like this, it will be very difficult for our companies to remain competitive. So what we need and what we're urging for is a coherence in European energy and climate policy, and this must not be swept underneath the carpet by European policymakers. Because we have to be very outspoken in our assessment. At the time being, European energy and climate policies are without any doubt producing the wrong results, and we will have to fix that, and we will have to fix this rapidly. And the chances there in the upcoming months, this is one of the things which are high up on the priorities of the Irish presidency. There will be a decisive council meeting in the months of April. There will be a meeting of the heads of government, the summit, in the months of May, and this is where we have to focus on. The chance is there, but again, it is about doing the right choices. What we need is a market and technology-driven approach to energy and climate policy. Not unsustainably subsidized shortcuts that temporarily hide problems without really solving them. And, as I just said it, make European companies foot a very high energy bill. The real answer, of course, lies in innovation, and it seems that other parts of the world, namely China and the US and others, are more successful in fostering the right technologies, and I always try to talk about the goal of having a low-carbon economy at the end, but I think we have seen that others are more successful in really tackling the right technologies actively.
Markus, 2 minutes.
Well, I'll try. So, most important, and just to sum this up, is what we need to change, talking about innovation, is that we also must change our totally risk-averse approach to many discussions we have in Europe. We have this from shale gas up to data protection, and this is a problem. I think we must move on to more seizing our chances and not only talking about the risks. Last point I wanted to tackle is international relations, but I think this has been said by many speakers before me. Of course, we have to make sure that we make this possibility with the US a success. Of course, we don't have to forget about Canada and others. And I think the relatively low current account deficit in 2011 of Europe as a whole of only 0.3% shows that as a whole we are competitive, but still we have way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, Our future depends on business, and the future of business depends on Europe. Europe has many assets, as has been tackled by many speakers today, and you've seen it in the film, but we must improve the attractiveness of Europe as a place for investment. The crisis may have given us a chance to change things and to move things in the right direction. Maybe I'm too optimistic on this, but I want to be optimistic because we have to be optimistic. But the window of opportunity is very short. The window of the possibility to go into the right direction, to make the right choices, and to boost competitiveness is very short. As new director of Business Europe, I can promise you that we will do everything to help European policymakers to make the right choices, and let's get down to business. Thanks for your attention.